My name is Muhannad Obeidat. I work for the eBusiness Suite team, and today I'll be talking to you about enterprise command centers for EBS and how you can use it to empower the eBusiness Suite user experience. So I'll give a little bit of an introduction to the product if some people haven't been through a presentation of ECC in the past, but we have just released ECC version 5 at the end of at the end of the month of September. And sorry about that. 1 second, let me just go back. Okay, and we have now a total of 30 different command centers built within the framework for Enterprise Command Center, ECC, with 100 plus different dashboards across all the different areas. So throughout the presentation today, I'll talk about a lot more detail about the footprint, how ECC works, and how you can take advantage of it. There's a link here at the bottom of the slide, oracle.com/ebs-ecc, that will take you to the quick start guide for enterprise command centers that lists everything that you need to know about the different modules and the different dashboards that we build with the technology. So let's go through a quick overview, assuming some of you already know ECC and may have ran POCs for it, or maybe are live on it, and some of you may be net new to this. So Enterprise Command Center is a new framework that we built as part of the eBusiness Suite development team to deliver new capabilities to the business user. So the ability to have dashboards that are interactive, that are that allow the end user to navigate through the data and discover different aspects of the data, look for audits, for exceptions, see the high-level picture of what's happening in any particular functional area, and then be able to drill down into details based on whatever business need they have when they're interacting with the system. And at any point of time, they want to make a transaction or make an update, pay an invoice, extend warranty, or escalate some request in service or in manufacturing. They should be able to do that because the whole system is integrated with eBusiness Suite. So Enterprise Command Center is built to fit the data that you have. So we have content out of the box that is shipped with every release of ECC, and we keep expanding on that. And then within that capability, you're able to navigate through your own data based on features that we have in the technology. So it's an information-driven navigation. Everything that we deliver to you is integrated functionally with EBS because it fits on top of the EBS installation that you have. And at the same time, you control access to the command centers using EBS security. And all of this is just an advanced new usage options that we have invested in heavily in the past 2 to 3 years. Doesn't require any licensing of any additional pieces of software. All of this is included in the 12.2 core line. So as you go, as you are implementing or using different aspects of 12.2, different product families and modules, you can enable and take advantage of the enterprise command centers in that particular area. So we deliver out-of-the-box content. So when we talk about ECC, and if you hear us talking about ECC for EBS, we typically mean two different things. One is the framework or the technology behind it that allows the product teams and you, when you extend, to build business dashboards that highlight lots of aspects about your data and then allow you to navigate through the data. And at the same time, content, ECC refers to content that we deliver with every new release that comes out of the eBusiness Suite development organization. So this year we've had 2 releases, one at the end of March and one at the end of September. And which each one of those, we had a new update to the technology. So new features at the technology level that allows us and you as business users to do more stuff more productively and make this software more interactive, and also new content from all the different functional areas that keep getting added with every release. So content that comes out of the box covers all the different product families or pillars within eBusiness Suite. It's integrated. It sits within your eBusiness Suite interface. It comes with the familiar controls that you are accustomed to, and how to give access to different users to those new capabilities within eBusiness Suite. And it honors eBusiness Suite security, meaning it understands whether the user that's logged in is allowed to see one operating unit or two or five or everything, or a particular ledger, a particular asset book, particular inventory org, and so forth. And it gives you these new capabilities embedded within that eBusiness Suite experience. So without spending like too much time describing it in the abstract, let's go and do a live demo from iProcurement Command Center. And iProcurement is not technically a command center, because a command center, we think of it as something that typically a professional business user will use. But here we're talking about iProcurement taking advantage of ECC to build an interactive, productive end user experience for self-service procurement. So I'm gonna share my browser. So if you just give me a second, please, to do that. And then what I'm gonna do here, you should be able to see my eBusiness Suite login UI. I'm gonna log into one of our demo instances as operations user. So I'll hit login. And this is, if you're not familiar with this interface, this is the 12.2 interface. This is something you can enable if you haven't enabled it yet, to get like this new look and feel, relatively new look and feel of the homepage with icons for all the different favorite areas that you have. So in this scenario, I'm going to click on iProcurement. So this is my typical iProcurement responsibility. But what we've done here is we enriched the user experience for iProcurement with the ECC technology. So now, instead of going to the traditional interface for iProcurement, where you select a store, then you go inside the store, then you search for something, and then you find it or may not find it, and the usual experience, we now have a completely new interface, completely new experience, empowered by Enterprise Command Center technology. So this page now is fully from Enterprise Command Center. And what I have here is I have frequently requested items, a list of my requisitions and notifications, but I have a very powerful search field at the top. I can do a search across all the different categories of items. So I don't have to select a store like I used to do in the past. I can type in the word monitor, for example, and I can immediately see monitor in so many different places highlighted. So this is the auto-suggest list that we come up with. I can search for the word monitor within a particular aspect or department, so to speak, quote unquote. So if you're familiar, and I'm assuming you are, with the Amazon interface, you have departments and you can select one particular department and search within that. You can do the same thing here. We have shopping categories in iProcurement, and maybe I want to shop for anything related to office supplies. So I can say filter only by office supplies when you're finding something for me, or I can do a filter across the board. So I'm going to do a filter across the board. So let's go and say, maybe I'm searching for a pen. I'll just hit enter in that case. So when I hit enter, what will happen is it will take me to the full-blown catalog search experience. And now what I'll get is results that match my search criteria, which is pen. And I'll get the images, obviously, for all of that. And I can navigate through that list and filter and compare different items and what have you. But I also have a few filters. Some of these filters, or a majority of these filters, are currently very generic. What does that mean? Every item in my catalog has a supplier, has a price, has a manufacturer, and so forth. But when I'm looking at certain subcategories of items, more filters would be appropriate to allow the user to filter by. So here, I haven't really filtered by a particular subcategory or shopping category. I have pens that could be anywhere, right? I have it in even computer accessories. I have it in so many different aspects. If I filter by, let's say, one particular shopping category, in this case, pens and pencils. So now I'm focused on a particular type of item that I want to buy. ECC, first of all, what ECC will do is will filter this list by only the ones that are under that shopping category, and then we'll refresh the UI to show you the matching list. At the same time, because now you have basically focused your view on a sub-aspect of the data, what ECC will do is it will allow you to filter by additional aspects of that product category and show it to you. I didn't show you how many records I had matched in the past, but now I have. First of all, ECC will always tell you how many records you're matching. This is very different from your usual experience with the traditional search and results form, where you never know until you navigate all the way to the end. And the second thing that I was saying is, when I filter by a particular category, ECC automatically shows me more refinement options that are only applicable to a pen. And this is all dynamically shown. So now, because you're looking for a pen, I know that you're interested in ink color. Maybe that's some criteria that you would like to search by. You're interested in point size, number of pieces that make up that pen, and so forth. So let's say I select a couple of point sizes. Now I'm filtering by something very, very specific for the pen category. And then ECC will allow me to retrieve that data and bring it back. So now we made available to you a lot of the rich attributes that you have in your data, and then with a really interactive interface. And it really explains the concept of information-driven navigation, because the information that you're looking at decides how we allow you to filter by color and point size versus, let's say, resolution if I'm searching for monitors. So now that I've done all of this, I'm ready to select between this and this. I'm not sure what are the exact differences between these two. I can hit the compare button. I can say highlight the differences, so I know what are the exact differences in what I'm looking at. So obviously the price is very different, and then a lot of additional information is different. And if I'm ready to make my purchase decision, all I have to do is just click on this add to cart button at the top of that screen. And you can see here, I get a confirmation message from EBS that says item was successfully added to your cart. So this experience is a huge departure from the current experience of going into a store, searching by a limited set of attributes, and not being able to see the total count that matches what you're looking for. Instead, here you have all of that information now bubbled up to you in an interactive fashion, and in a way that is very similar to what you expect of an e-commerce site and the experience you have today on any e-commerce site on the internet. So we bring that now into the ERP. So this was just a showcase to give you a feeling of the different kind of capabilities that we have within ECC. So let's go back to the slides, and we'll keep going back and forth between the slides and the UI so that we can show more examples. So with that, we kind of like have some common understanding of the value and the capability that ECC gives you. Now, as I mentioned, we just released ECC v5, and it's another tremendous release for us in terms of content, in terms of the amount of effort and investment across literally every team within EBS. We've added new modules that did not exist in the past. We've enhanced a lot of the existing dashboards, and we added new capabilities for the administrator to track how ECC itself is being used in your organization. And we have a lot of framework improvements that make the business user experience much better. In terms of footprint, and this is a common question. So I also know that in the morning session, Nadia presented where EBS is and our investment priorities, where they have been and where they are going to in our future roadmap. And ECC is a big part of that. She mentioned also that we had 30 modules and 100 plus different dashboards. These are the 30 modules. And then we have dashboards that cover all those different areas. The ones that are highlighted with the new label are net new in V5. So these did not exist in V4, iStore and advanced pricing. And on top of that, everything that is colored in this list has been enhanced compared to V4. So if you've looked at, let's say, procurement command center or projects or order management, inventory, any of those things, if you looked at them back in V4 and did not find everything that you needed, take another look at our user guides and release content documents, RCDs, to know what's net new in V5 with this release. Also, another common question is, you released V5 alongside 12.2.10. When will you backport it to 12.2.9 or 12.2.8 or wherever you happen to be? And let me clarify, ECC is a parallel release effort to the major release of EBS. So we support every single release of EBS starting from 12.2.4. And we're even forward compatible to the future release of EBS 12.2.11. So what that means is when we released V5, from day one, it is already automatically applicable to 12.2.9, 12.2.8, 12.2.7, even though it was released side by side with 12.2.10, it's applicable to all the previous releases of EBS. So you can take advantage of it wherever you are. And we take a lot of care to make sure that we keep that promise when we go from release to release. So we always get the new release applicable to every EBS drop starting from 12.2.4, and V5 is no different from that. Okay, so how does ECC work? I just have very, very high level slides. We have deep dive sessions that we post using the Oracle Learning Stream. I'll have a link to that at the end. So if you're interested in more technical details about how it works and how to get started, that is available. But at a very high level, ECC is a new technology or a new set of capabilities that we install as a black box. And that black box can be running on a separate machine, like I'm showing here in the slide, or could be running side by side with your EBS middle tier. It comes with its own web logic. It's not another database. As a matter of fact, the only data that it stores in the database is very small amount of metadata that controls the behavior of ECC itself and all the different dashboards that are built within the framework. But otherwise, ECC is a standalone WebLogic application that we deliver as part of our installer. So we lay down the WebLogic instance, we lay down all the different dependencies that we need and our own software on top of that. And then the content is the content itself from the product teams, from the different functional areas, is shipped as EBS patches. These are the requirements to get started. So you need to be running ECC on Linux. Your EBS could be running anything, could be on Solaris, Windows, Linux, or what have you. But ECC itself, as a piece of technology, runs on Linux. You can hook it up to whatever EBS you have. And these are the minimum requirements. If your requirements are different, you have a lot more data, a lot more users, consult with our installation document. We'll give you some guidance about the capacity required. A very good question at this point is this secure? Is this integrated and with EBS, and how does it work when you say it's integrated with EBS? So the first thing is everything that you see in the ECC dashboard is controlled by EBS security and EBS privileges. So you control who gets to see that dashboard, or if you want them to not have access to it, you can prevent them from ever seeing that. So that's done through typical permissions and rules on the EBS side. And then you can, we automatically mimic the same kind of security controls that you have on the EBS side into ECC. So I have here a screenshot of payables, and in payables, I'm securing by ledger, let's say, or securing by operating unit, or securing by whatever the case happens to be. For example, in assets by asset book, whatever I'm filtering by, we apply that same security view to ECC dashboard. So whatever the user has access to EBS, that's the only data that they will see inside of ECC. Furthermore, we have integrations with forms and OA pages. So in this case, I'm in assets and I'm drilling down through the hierarchy of my locations to look at assets in San Francisco. And you can see I've been selecting one filter at a time until I ended up in San Francisco. Next, I'm going to look at assets within San Francisco that are unassigned, and I want to assign them to someone. So what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to click on assign employee, and what will happen is the form pops up for the asset. The asset is already pre-populated, pre-queried in that form, and all I want to do now is assign it to an employee. So my discovery, quote unquote, session started with the ECC dashboard that is intuitive, interactive, easy to use, shows me a lot of information. Then I navigated through the data to get from all of my assets across the globe to only an asset in a particular building in San Francisco. And then later on, what I wanted to do is just to make sure that all the laptops in that particular office are assigned to the right employees that have ownership of them. So that's what I'm doing. And the only thing that I need to do in forms is to basically assign. So I don't go to forms to search. I don't go to forms or reporting to do any discovery. I'm doing all of that from the dashboard. So that's my landing page and, so to speak, springboard into the transactional UI to take the final action. And we have the same capability on the OA framework side. So OA framework pages, this is a screenshot of ECC results table for orders in order management. And we have a menu item that says update orders. So basically mass update all of those 4 orders that I selected. When I click on that, I end up on the OA framework page for updating the orders, and I can make the update from here and go back to the ECC dashboard. So again, the order management command center became my springboard into figuring out what are the priorities, what are the important things I need to take care of, what do I need to update. And then when I got to that last point of making an update, I clicked on take an action. It took me to the appropriate e-business suite page that allows me to take that action. I take that action and I continue on with other business for the day. Okay, so now we've covered a number of good examples. We've covered the iProcurement example, and then we showed a couple of additional examples like assets and order management in the integration scenario. Now let's talk about net new capabilities that we added in V5. But before that, I want to show you at a very high level the number of features that you have in ECC. So again, ECC is this new capability that sits inside of your e-business suite experience. And now when we demo EBS, we just demo the ECC dashboards as basically your landing page, your springboard into everything else that comes after that. So if I go and demo order management, now I start from the ECC dashboard, which shows me everything that's happening in my orders that are in flight. And then I can decide to do whatever I need to do for those orders. So all of those features that we added in ECC across the 5 different releases that we've released in the past are listed here, and they allow me to give that experience that you just saw. The ones that are highlighted in blue or whatever the color is at the bottom of every group is the net new stuff that we did in V5. The first category is business user. So you as somebody who's sitting at the other end of that screen, you're not the administrator, you're not the designer of the page, you're somebody who's responsible for paying invoices on time, responsible for collecting payments, handling disputes, escalating orders, making sure that procurements are fulfilled on time. You get the features that are in the first box. We keep always our focus on the business user and making sure that the business user experience is as empowered and also as interactive, as productive as it can be. So we added a lot more capabilities there, and I'll go through examples of those. Same thing for the designer. The designer is the person that needs the tools to be able to deliver that experience to you. So we keep enhancing their experience, giving them more tools and more capabilities to define UIs that are as powerful as you see here in the demos. And the last one is for the administrator. Obviously, administrator is a core role. It starts with the administrator. They need to be happy using the product. They need to be comfortable supporting it. They need to be comfortable also monitoring what's happening in the product and usage patterns and all of that. So we added a lot of enhancements there, especially around auditability, the ability to audit what's happening in the system. Okay, so let's talk about a few examples of those. So this is the first example, which is page display preferences. And what you'll see here in the video is I can change how the charts look. This chart was very busy with a lot of items. So maybe I want to reduce the number of items that show in the chart only to 5 rather than the whole list of basically components in this case. And then in the other chart also, I want to do something similar to that. So these are runtime options that you've always had access to be able to modify the dashboards in case of ECC. But what we do today is we preserve your changes. So when you make a change and say this chart should not show up in a horizontal way, should show up in a vertical way, should not show me 100 suppliers. My top 100 suppliers should only show me my top 10 suppliers, should be ordered by a different dimension, maybe by date ascending rather than date descending. All of these changes that you're doing now will be preserved for your user uniquely, so that when you go back to that dashboard is really your dashboard and looks a little bit different than everybody else's dashboard. So we call that page display preferences, and you have that undo button or reset at the top, and you have it at every component. So if you changed the view of a component or the presentation of a component, you want to take it back, you can do that by clicking undo. Another thing we added is cascading breadcrumbs. So we have a feature, let me pause for a second here, in ECC that is very powerful, and you've seen it in the forms integration demo that I had a few slides ago. We basically allow you to navigate from one hierarchy to the next. And in this case, I had this particular pie chart at the country level, and I selected United States. And what you'll see here is I have now United States as a label at the top of the chart or the pie chart. So next, I'm going to click on maybe a different location, or maybe I'll filter by something else. I'm going to filter by category in this scenario. What happened when I filtered by category is category of office equipment that I clicked on is now my focus area. And then seeing that focus, all the office equipment for some reason happened to be in San Francisco. Now the pie chart automatically is showing me San Francisco, but the breadcrumbs are actually the ones that are telling me, hey, by the way, you ended up in California and San Francisco. So we used to have that feature of being able to drill down through a hierarchy for a long time now, actually since V1. But what we added in V5 is the ability to tell you what is the trail of data that you navigated through, whether directly or indirectly, as you've been doing this information discovery session of your enterprise data in EBS. So this is a net new capability that we added on any component that has hierarchical navigation through the data. It cascades from one level to the next. You keep track of basically where you are in those different levels by looking at the breadcrumb at the top of the page. Chart maximization. So let's take this example also. So in this example, I have a chart that was in the main page here. Let me go back here. So this is the whole page experience. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this maximize button. And what that will do is it will give me that chart on its own. So now I can see it in a better way. But what we also added to that is the ability to resize that chart to whatever size you wish. And that allows you to see a lot more detail. Like when the chart was busy with a lot of data, we cannot really label every single entry. But now that you gave us a lot more space on your desktop, we can show you more color or more detail to the chart. What else we added is the ability to take a screenshot. So you can click on that camera button for a chart, and that would download a PNG of the chart. So you can share that in an email with a colleague, or maybe you can put it on a slide to present to other people in the team or to management the status of a particular area of the business. So it's a neat new feature that we added in V5. Also, as our customers started using ECC in a lot of different areas, they asked us to add export capability. We resisted adding that at the top, or trying to basically have the customers tell us why they think they need the export, and to see if we can build those requirements into ECC itself. But we know and understand that in some cases you want to share the data with somebody else in the organization so that they can take action on it, or maybe you want to take it to a third-party system and do something special with it. So we know that you need that data to be movable from ECC into other areas. So we allow now, we added that feature in V4 in a limited capacity, and then we expanded it to everything, literally almost everything that you need to do in V5. So in V5, you can export data from a chart. As you can see here, I have that download button in my runtime menu. I click on that, I get an Excel sheet or a CSV file really that has the data. You can export data from a tag cloud. You can export from any of the aggregation components that we have, like aggregate tables. And we already had it for results tables and grids back in V4. So again, a feature that's driven by customers such as yourselves who were using the product and wanting to get a little bit more out of it. We added additional capabilities also, like expanding the number of rows that you see in any particular table. So now when you maximize any table, you'll see more rows. I think all of us know about the limits. For example, we have in EBS generally, we don't want to show you a lot of data in one shot because of the performance impact of that. So now we manage that in a way where it's controlled by you. And if you say maximize, we take that as show me more records, and we do that up to 50 records instead of the typical 10. Another capability that we added, and it goes under the category of advanced search capabilities for the business user, is the ability to refine by a negative value. So instead of saying find everything, all the employees that have an active assignment, maybe you want to do the opposite. Find everybody that doesn't have an active assignment. I want to see what I need to do in that scenario. So this is the HR dashboard, which debuted back in V3, if I remember correctly, and it's obviously available in V5 as well. In the dashboard, in the HR dashboard, you can look at your organization if you happen to be a manager at any level in the hierarchy, or you can look at employees in the organization if you are somebody in the HR department. And you'll see a lot of information about those employees, their tenure, their performance, their salary, last salary change events, and their competencies, and a lot of stuff like that. So in this case, I wanted to search by employees that don't have active assignments. And now that's very easy to do in ECC. So I typed in the word active in the assignment status, and I was able to click on that button that says exclude all. So you can see here, I have active salary, active appointment, blah, blah, blah. And every one of those has a do not, like a kind of like a do not enter sign, meaning not active appointment, not active assignment. So when I apply that filter, ECC will show me everything that does not have those designations assigned to them. And then I can further do whatever I want. I can add more filters to that and so forth. So in this case, I'm going to say, add another negative filter, show me everybody that's not a consultant. So it's a net new feature. It's really advanced and gives you a lot of capabilities to navigate the data in a from a positive perspective, or negative negative refinement perspective. Others in pie chart is also another new feature that we added. So this pie chart would have been very busy if I showed all the small slices. Now we have control that we set during design time, but you can also change at runtime to say under a certain threshold, don't show me any more slices on the pie. Maybe it becomes too busy or very hard to read. So now we have that capability, and we'll show you an others or an other slice in the pie chart. And the other nice thing that we did for this is you can filter by it. So if you're interested in seeing what's inside that small segment of the data, you can filter by it, and then you'll see the items within that. And then, as I said, you can play around with the threshold yourself. Here I made it 5. And if I click on that, now I have different items within that because it's a bigger bucket of everything that's under 5%. So it's a neat feature also that we added that we think will make the business user experience much more productive. Another thing is a sliding window in the chart. So we have two things in the chart. We have first the capability to limit how many data elements I show. And then we have a sliding window where I can see the first, for example, here in a timeline, I can see the first 30 items in a timeline, or the last 30 items of the timeline. So if I go back to this page tomorrow and it's the last 30 items, it's basically a rolling window of 30 days. So I'll look at activities that are happening in my system for the past 30 days continuously. And that's a net new capability that we added in V5. So that was a run through a lot of examples of net new things that came in V5. Obviously, as you can see from the amount of time it took me just to cover a sample of that, we've done a lot in V5. And overall in ECC, we've done a lot to give you features that transform really your user experience with the enterprise system to something that is, very modern, very interactive, and a familiar experience that you get on the web when you're searching on something in Google or in Amazon or wherever you happen to be. Now you get similar interactions within the enterprise data with modern UIs and modern interfaces. I should have mentioned at the top of the call, if you have any questions, please ask me on the chat. I'll try to speed up a little bit through here so that we leave some time for the questions. So this is just a quick demo of payables. We demoed iProcurement and a little bit of assets, a little bit of order management. Let's demo payables. Payables, we added something for the subledger accounting. So I have all the subledger accounting events from payables, and then I need to transform those into GL. And I need to make sure that my transactions are all accounted for. I've done the final accounting. I don't have any errors. I don't have any issues that will possibly delay my period close. So we added the dashboard specifically around that in payables and one in receivables in V5 in V4, but we did some enhancements on it in V5, and it looks like this. So let's say I go into the dashboard, I focus on whatever open period I'm interested in closing. I will look at all the draft accounting events, and I'll look in this experience on the credit memo validation events. So if I expanded that table to see a little bit more information, I noticed that one particular account is being used that I don't expect it to be used or to be part of the credit memo validation events. So I filter by that. So now you can see here, as I'm navigating, I'm adding more and more criteria to my filter state. So I'm filtering by a particular period, I'm filtering by a particular event type and a particular account description. And now I have a list of all the different events that triggered an entry into this account. So I can export that information, share it with somebody else in my organization, and have them investigate why the credit memo validation has hit an account that it should not hit, and then get that fixed. So that will hopefully make it easier for me to close my period. The other thing is, if I think this issue could happen in the future, I can create a saved search. I don't want to use the word bookmark, but effectively a bookmark that will take me back to exactly that same list of filter conditions. As you can see here, I've added 2, 4, 5 different filter conditions to arrive at this issue that needs to be resolved. So in the future, I don't want to do that from the start every single time. So I can save it and come back to it every time to check, maybe a week before I start closing my periods, if I have this issue popping its ugly head again. So that's a feature that we added back in V4, but you can take advantage of it here also in V5 in these dashboards that we introduced for period close. Okay. So with that, let me cover a couple of different aspects that we added. And again, I'll go through them rather quickly just for the interest of time and keeping some time for questions. So auditability. So this is a request also that came from customers. How do I know who's using what in my ECC dashboards and how they're using it? And the other thing is, we had also requirements from iProcurement team in EBS to say, we want to give the ability to the professional buyers to see what the self-service buyers are doing. And if they're searching for something and they're not finding in the catalog, the professional buyer needs to know about that and needs to maybe negotiate new relationships or new product list with a supplier and bring it into the system. So I'm going to go quickly through this. So basically, this is a new dashboard that we introduced in V5. It has 2 different versions of it. This one is embedded within iProcurement, and it allows you to specifically look at iProcurement search events. So let's say I searched for a Mac laptop and it's not there, and I go and buy it off contract. I don't want that to happen, right, in my organization as a buyer. I want to make sure that no spending outside of my negotiated contracts, preferred pricing happens. So that you can do now with ECC. So you have an ECC facade or dashboard or basically landing page for all my iProcurement. And then as the user is searching for something and not finding them, we're tracking that for you and presenting it in this dashboard. The other use case that you can use this for is to track if people are doing what you expect them to do. So if we go and think of this same use case that we were just looking at, period close, are people accessing the period close dashboard throughout the period, or are they backloading that all the way until the end of the period and like firefighting mode? So you can see that here also from the ECC dashboard. We gave you this receivables closing UI. You can actually filter by receivables closing UI and see who's been accessing it, what they've been doing with it. I can see here the user called ECC Fin has been accessing that dashboard, and I can get details of every single session they use to access the dashboard and what they've done on that dashboard. So this is great new capability that's added in V5. Okay, so with that, I'll try to close with extensibility. This is a common question. Do we have extensibility? And this deserves lots and lots of discussions. So I'll just give you highlights. Yes, we allow extensibility. We allow something we call basic extensibility, which doesn't require any coding. It's only done from the UI, and it's something that you do in minutes rather than hours or days. And then we allow something we call advanced extensibility, which requires coding, because that means maybe you have a requirement to bring more data into ECC. So you end up doing what we call advanced extensibility. It requires a little bit of coding to do the ETLs, the extract, transform of load of data from EBS into ECC. All of this information is captured here in a very detailed guide, Enterprise Command Center Extensibility Guide. We keep it up to date with every release. It has 100+ pages of instructions on how to create your own dashboards, and that's the basic extensibility part, or how to bring new data into ECC, and that's the advanced capability. Throughout the release, throughout every release cycle, we make it easier for your administrator to use ECC, to monitor it, and to support it. So we added these capabilities. In terms of hearing from you, I would love to hear from you with ideas for where we should invest next. Use our Moz community. It's linked also from the slides, to give us ideas, vote on other people's ideas that you see are interesting, or ask us questions. Would love to hear from you. If you have any questions about implementation, about whether something exists or not, and we'll get back to you on the Moz community. Take advantage of our learning subscriptions if you're interested in getting more technical details about how do I get started, how do I get things going. And then we created a one-stop shop for everything related to ECC, whether it's from the technology side, the patching side, or even the content side and the training material that we created. It's called the Enterprise Command Center Quick Start Guide. It's linked from the oracle.com website directly, and we have the links that I showed at the very top. EBS-ECC, oracle.com EBS-ECC. And then when you go there, you'll see everything you'll ever need to know about ECC, including recorded videos by Cliff, by myself, and all the different product managers and owners of the different dashboards that we created with ECC. So with that, let us go to Q&A if we have any questions. Yeah. So let me get to these questions that I have here. So the first question is that I'll start with the ones that have the highest votes. Do the refinements demonstrated need to be configured? Is it automatically picked up from the item data you load? Yes, so no configuration is required. What that means is we have some configuration to say what attributes you want to show in the dashboard versus not. So that configuration is there. We automatically shrink that list. When I say there's no configuration required, there's no configuration to make that list shrink and expand, because we shrink and expand the list based on the data. So let's say I have 15 attributes or 100 attributes in my data set. I can have those 100 attributes show up in the guided navigation. By default, the ones that we ship to you, the dashboards that we ship to you, will have a lot of attributes that you can filter by. Now, as you are looking at a particular subset of the data, some of those attributes don't have any value, so they don't show up on the list. So your list is always uncluttered because of that. Or maybe some of those attributes have a single value. So if it has a single value, that means there's nothing to filter by. It's already filtered because it only has a single value. We also remove that. And then you saw the example in iProcurement where I selected pen as a shopping category, and it showed me things that only apply to pen. That is dynamic behavior that we do to say, if particular value is selected, show corresponding attributes that make sense. So there is some configurability to it, but then there's a lot of dynamic behavior that you get for free, as long as you say, here are my set of attributes that I would like to show. The rest of the intelligence happens in the technology itself. Is there less demand from the business user for reports through tools like OBIE with the implementation of ECC? So I don't know if I can comment on particular tools, but we think that ECC can replace a lot of different reports that you may have today. So ECC is built in a way that is different from the traditional reporting or traditional intelligence, in the sense that it's a flattened or a denormalized representation of an entity to make it look like the real world entity. What do I mean by that? Like an invoice in the eBusiness Suite database is modeled using relational database modeling design with a lot of tables and relationships and all of that. But an invoice in ECC is typically closer to what you would expect a real life invoice to look like. So it's basically a very big record, very, very wide, has a lot of information about it, about its payment schedule, about its supplier, about who requested it, about its payment status, and so forth. So it's basically a very wide record, and that very wide record allows you to build so many different use cases on top of that. So instead of building one report here and one report for that use case and this use case and so forth, you end up with a dashboard that can support so many different use cases at the same time. So we think that ECC fits very nicely in an area we refer to as operational intelligence. So you want to run your operations. It's not about printing a report that you need to send out to some government agency that's monitoring the business you're in or something like that. But you need that data to be able to do your day-to-day job. Operational intelligence, so to speak, ECC fits perfectly within that and allows you to kind of like not have to build a lot of custom reports to support one-off requirements here and there, because we give you that open-ended kind of conversation with the data because of the nature of how the data is modeled within ECC. Are there many HR payroll dashboards? Command center. So we do have right now one dashboard, one module with a few dashboards for HR. It's focused on the HR manager use case or the HR specialist, like in the HR department, who has access to see employees that are not necessarily reporting to them. So that particular aspect is there. We call it Workforce Explorer because it effectively allows you to see a lot of different aspects of your workforce, their geography, competencies, like I said about that during the session. We don't have anything for payroll, but we have folks in the payroll team actively talking to us about how they can bring capabilities to ECC from a payroll perspective. So it's not targeted for V6, but it's targeted for a future release, or at least it's being discussed for a future release beyond V6 for the payroll side. Are there any plans to do dashboards for ASCP? As far as I know, no. So that's just a short answer there because that's a different team. And as far as I know, they don't have plans for that. And as you know, that always sits on a separate instance than the rest of EBS. Okay, if you take advantage of extensibility to include extra attributes, are there licensing implications? Creeping into data which should be in a different command center and which would require a different EBS license. So obviously, when we say ECC does not require an additional license, obviously you need to have license to the underlying module in EBS. So if I want to use ECC payables, I should have ECC financials license. And if I want to use order management, ECC dashboard, I should have order management. So if you are using order management licensing order management, but for whatever reason have not licensed financials, obviously you should not be reading data from financials to begin with, because theoretically you should not be using financials. So that's like the simplistic answer to this. Now, in terms of the activities that you do to extend ECC, do they trigger licensing? There are two answers to that. So first thing is, everything that you do on the dashboard is metadata driven. You are writing zero code. And I mentioned that when I said basic extensibility. What we mean by basic extensibility is it doesn't require any coding. And no required coding means you're not deploying anything to our WebLogic. You're not deploying any Java code. You're not deploying any applications or anything like that. You're only controlling metadata in ECC. What that means is the limited use license that we inherit within the ECC install will be sufficient. And as long as you're using WebLogic within that context, you will not trigger an additional license. Now, if you go to advanced extensibility, you will need to extend, let's say, our data load. But when you do that, you typically will do PL SQL procedures into the eBusiness Suite database. So that requires a full use license of the Oracle database. But as far as I know, probably 99, if not 100% of our customers would have a full use license of the Oracle eBusiness Suite database because they needed that for a lot of other reasons before ECC made its debut. So yes, there are licensing requirements that you have to keep in mind from an extensibility perspective, but I think you are probably covered if you already have the full use license for the database. And if you when you do the UI part in ECC, that does not trigger a full use license because it's all metadata driven and does not require you to write or deploy any net new code to WebLogic. If we implement 12.2.4, I'm assuming, then is ECC a default as part of the installation or needs to be requested for? So far, actually, whether it's 12.2.4 or all the way up until 12.10, we kept ECC as a parallel delivery to EBS. We deliver it twice a year. So it did not make sense to us to include in one version of EBS and then ask you to apply it in another version of EBS. So at any rate, it's always an additional set of batches that you apply on top of EBS. And you do that you have an absolute list of minimum requirements. And then on top of that, you have optional ones that you apply as you need. So if you're not interested at all in manufacturing, you never have to apply any manufacturing patches. But if you're interested in financials and HR, you apply the prereqs for both and then the common set of prereqs. So the short answer is you have to apply regardless of which EBS you are on. You have to apply patches on top of EBS. Yeah, so that's the short answer to that. Okay. I don't see any more questions. Nashwa, do we have any more questions that I did not cover?
No, that's it.
Okay, excellent. So thank you guys. I'm sorry I went a few minutes over time. This I think will be recorded and made available. Please take advantage of the MOS community. We'll share the slides so that you have all the links we talked about, and the quick start guide is an excellent place to start. Thank you again for attending the session, and we look forward to hearing from you as you start experimenting and hopefully deploying this in production.